To go live. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. It's Material Issues with David Bash of International Pop Overthrow Festival and yours truly, Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. David's got one of his better shirts on this evening. I have a little shirt called John Lemon for reasons that will be realized shortly. But I'm so happy to be here tonight on a very special evening, Material Issues. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Mr. David Bash of International Pop Overthrow. David.
Thank you so much, Mark. And it's really a relief that finally, after 6 episodes, it looks like we've solved the connection problem. And basically, I borrowed my wife's laptop. So, honey, Rena Barfield, thank you so much. She's actually working from home today, and I don't think she'd want to be distracted, so I'm not going to bring her on, but I do want to thank her very much. And I love this connection. I look downright handsome today. The miracle of modern technology.
You do. I do. You love it. The shirt's fantastic, and I'm sure everybody will be commenting shortly about the fact that you are you've got a great connection going on. But we got a great night in store for everybody this evening. So anybody tuning in has any comments whatsoever, questions on anything going on that we're talking about, please pop on and say hello, and make sure you share this with all of your friends. Everything on Facebook, YouTube, just keep it going. The more the merrier.
If you haven't signed on with StreamYard, if you make a comment, and we hope you do, identify yourself, because otherwise the name doesn't show up on our screen. It just says user. So definitely identify yourself. We want to hear from you. We want to know who you are. But are we ready to introduce our guest, Mark?
That's up to you, Dave. I'm sitting here just excited as can be. I could barely sit on my chair. So the sooner you introduce a special guest, the happier I'm going to be.
Well, then we better get to it. All right. Well, Mark and I would love to welcome to Material Issues a man who, in a relatively short time, has accomplished so much. He's a singer, songwriter, producer extraordinaire, has worked with a litany of famous people. He was part of Jacob Dylan's backing band in the Laurel Canyon movie, and he has recently put out a tribute disc to Paul McCartney's Ram, which I have right here, called Ram On. And it's really an amazing disc, and we'll be talking about this and many more things. But right now, would you please give a huge welcome to the Zelig of Pop, Mr. Fernando Perdomo.
Hi, everybody.
There he is.
Fernando.
Yes,
Hey,
indeed.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much for being on Material Issues with us.
So excited to be on this, and thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. I mean, you have worked with so many people, and it's to your credit, not just due to your talent, which is immense, but also your zeal, your assertiveness, just getting to know as many people as you can, and getting them to know you in a way where they come to you and say, "I'd like to work with you. I'd like you to produce our album, or I'd like you to play on our record." Or if you go to them, they'll say, and we're talking about some big names here, like Todd Rundgren, for example, and Andy Pratt, and many others. And we want to talk about this, of course, and many other things. But tell us how you got started in this whole business.
Well, you've been around for about 20 years of my career, so you've seen the growth, and you've seen where I came from. Because it's interesting. It's like I was born and raised in Miami Beach, Florida. And it's a very odd town to be into the music I've been into my entire life, because I come from a Cuban background. My mom was one of the founders of the Miami Herald in Spanish. She was a brilliant journalist and columnist.
Wow.
My dad was an eccentric but a tone deaf kind of like non-musician dude, and I didn't really speak a lot of English either. So I didn't have a lot of rock and roll in the house until I found my own. I grew my own, as you say. I had a 16-year-old. My brother is 16 years older than me, and he had a nice little vinyl collection that was mostly disco. So it was really funny. Like one of my first ever rock records was the Sgt. Pepper soundtrack because he was a big Bee Gees fan.
From the
So
movie.
those Beatles songs I heard for the first time on that record. So
Wow.
it's a rather odd introduction, but it's funny how that record keeps on coming back as an influence. I recently did a Harry Nilsson tribute single under my name, Fernando Perdomo's Mellotron Orchestra, and it's funny, the videos that I put together are completely influenced by the Alice Cooper Because scene with the with the father-son scene,
Right.
which has always been a big influence on me. But okay, so I grew up in Miami Beach. Now, my family had two churches on Sunday. One of them was Catholic, typical Catholic Cuban church, and the other one was the flea market. And the flea market in Miami was a wonderful place because there was always a ton of records being sold. And after a little while, the $5 my mom would give me every Sunday to buy toys, I started buying records. And $5 back in 1984, 85 could get you about 10 to 15 records. So
Yeah.
I started building up a huge record collection. By the time I was 9 or 10 years old, I had over 1,000 records. And it was a lot of cool stuff because not a lot of people were looking for records in this flea market. It was a mostly Hispanic flea market.
Oh.
And I remember this one guy named Tony. And every time I would walk by, he'd be like, I've got some jitterbugs for you. And what he meant by jitterbugs were rock records. And man, I got all the cool stuff from him. Everything from, Meet the Beatles to my first copy of Sgt. Pepper to my first copy of Tommy, my first copy of my first King Crimson record, my first Yes record. And I'll never forget, it's like these days, it's like with the advent of the internet and Spotify and YouTube, you could tell me about some obscure, private press release that was released in, they did 200 copies of some weirdo record and I could find it and I could listen to it. Back then, it was like, especially because I didn't have a lot of money, my family was totally middle class. We didn't have a lot we didn't buy a lot of new stuff. So that was a great thing that records happened to be one of those things that we would buy and we would listen to, and I would get a secondhand turntable, and I would get secondhand equipment. My brother was big into electronics, so one of the things that was also very influential to me was he got into renting videos at Blockbuster and taping them from one VCR to another, and that's how I ended up with this incredible music video collection on VHS. So we would rent, like for example, Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii. Next thing you know, I've got it. Next thing you know, I've got, Fleetwood Mac on the Mirage Tour, Evening of Utopia. And all, again, it's like, thank you to the Blockbuster on Alton Road in Miami Beach for having these videos that probably nobody rented except for me and my brother. So there you go. That. Then something magical happened in 1989. And it was VH1. We had cable. We as a lot of kids that grew up in the 80s, MTV was a big influence. And I was really into VH1, and they had a thing called Paul McCartney Day, all night, Paul McCartney, because it was like a big publicity stunt for Flowers in the Dirt.
Right.
So they played Rock Show. And I taped it with an 8-hour VHS cassette while I went to school. And that's all I watched for about a year. And that was the thing that made me want to be a musician was Rock Show.
Wow.
That Wings Over America performance. Jimmy McCulloch with that SG, which, it's funny. It's like every time I put on my SG, I look at myself and I'm like, this thing looks tiny on me. It looked like a 35 on Jimmy because Jimmy was like all of 5'1" and
I know.
very young, very diminutive, and it was always like a surprise when I got my Guild SG. I was just like, oh, this thing looks tiny on me, but then again, I was pretty big, so whatever. But that's really what made me want to become a musician. So obviously, I was very young, so I missed the golden era of Miami bands getting signed, because the golden era was the early to mid 90s, and that's when the Maverick, Nuclear Valdez, Marilyn Manson, Mary Carlson, the Goods, these were all bands that were coming out of Miami. And by the time I finally got out of high school, the thing that was big in Miami was something called hardcore, and it was something that I definitely had nothing to do with. That was bands like Nonpoint, Endo, the Groovenicks, a bunch of other things. It was like kind of like everybody sounded like Korn, and there was rap going on. And meanwhile, I was working on my own music, and there's a guy named Roger Hudai, a band called Ex Norwegian. We were best friends in high school, and we both got 4-tracks for Christmas, and we realized that we could join forces and start this little 4-track band. So we had a band called Dip, and we did everything from original music to, there's a King Crimson cover that's on YouTube. We did Happy Family off of Lizard. We were into all sorts of weird stuff. Let's just say that I was definitely a weirdo in my high school. Another thing is,
who wasn't?
Yeah. Another thing is, I was in a school that had a rock ensemble program, and the cool thing about rock ensemble was that it's kind of like jazz band, except we played rock and roll. And there was a program started by a guy named Doug Burris back in 1972. And for my for my senior year, actually no, it was my junior year. My junior year, we did Sgt. Pepper cover to cover, and that's all on YouTube as well. And it was an incredible experience. So by the time I got out of high school, I'd already performed on stages and done some major stuff. So I get out of high school, and instead of I started college a little bit, but I ended up really doing the School of Hard Knocks and playing clubs. And I started sneaking into clubs when I was 15, 16 years old. And I never.
You had the beard then?
Yeah, I had a beard. I had a beard, and let's just say that everyone was shocked when I finally did turn 21. When it was announced on stage, let's just say the owner of this club called Tobacco Road said, "Wait, you're 21 now? Does that mean I should not let you back in here for another 5 years?" So
make up for it.
It was really funny. But so I played in a bunch of local bands, and I made some solo recordings that didn't really come out, and I got discovered at a club by a songwriter named Nicholas Tovar, who loved my guitar playing and said, "Hey, I want you to play on a demo on some songs that I'm selling to artists, so come to Emilio Estefan's studio and let's do some recording." Well, I'll never forget the look on his face when I showed up with an amplifier and like 6 guitars and a pedal board. He says, "Oh, I was just planning on having you just use this pod." I'm like, "No, let's mic an amp." And it was weird. They didn't really know how to mic an amp, but they did. And it ended up being for good, because one of the songs I played on was a song called No Se Falta that got shown to an artist named Christian Castro, who loved the song, but more importantly, loved my guitar playing. Now, in the age of Pro Tools, they were able to take my guitars right off the demo and put it on the master.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, good news is," Nicholas calls me, he's like, "Good news, Christian Castro is going to record the song. Good news, even better news, is that he's going to use your guitars, so we're going to have to pay you twice." So that's great. When the song went to number 1, I got called in to play on the rest of the record.
Wow.
I'm in the studio with Gloria Estefan's band recording new tracks for the album at Criteria, which was amazing. I'm only 22 years old when this happens, by the way. So,
and now at the time when you were 22 years old, were you really feeling like, oh my freaking God, this is unbelievable, or is it more that way in hindsight?
In hindsight, I was blown away, but it was just just another thing I was doing, because
right.
If there's one like through line, is that I'm always working on a ton of different things. I had already started producing. I already had started working on my own band project, which was the Fernando Perdomo band, which put out this kind of small little album called This Can Be You, which I didn't really know how to sing yet, so don't listen to it. It's bad. I should re-record the vocals on it one day because there's some good songs on there. But I was already working with a band with Derek Cintron called DC3, and I was, playing in a few different other bands in Miami. But this changed my life because next thing you know, I was on the road with Christian, and we did 2 or 3 years of touring behind the album, playing stadiums and playing huge venues, which was great. And in the end, it ended up turning into more stuff because I played with Paulina Rubio, an artist named Soraya, and I played with an artist named Tego Calderon on a record. So Miami gave me some interesting experiences because it was it was all like that people see. There's a lot of musicians I know that weren't making as much money as I was because they stuck to what they were doing, the English rock thing. But I went on into what was popular in Miami, which is that I didn't go into the hip hop or dance world, which was really making a lot of money, but the Latin stuff really was somewhere. But what ended up happening is that I really was finding myself not playing on any records in a real way that I would ever want to buy. Because if there's one thing about Latin pop music, it's very derivative, it's very fake sounding, very auto-tuned, very programmed, and it just wasn't my thing. But I built up a reputation. I started playing in more bands. I started my Dreaming in Stereo project, which came out of, this is a big thing. So there was 2 near misses in Miami that almost made it big. One of them was Chris Price's band with his brothers called Price that got picked up by Geffen, Ron Fair.
Wow. Didn't know about that.
And I ended up not going through with it because they needed me to play lead guitar. So I was playing lead guitar. We did an audition out here in LA at Ocean Way Studios for Jack Joseph Puig, Tom Panunzio, and Ron Fair. And Jack, I lost my mind because I was a huge Jellyfish fan. So I was just like, all right, talking about him. And it was incredible. But then there was some type of inner contract that basically said that if I don't want to go into it. There was some clauses in there that made me go, this isn't working. And then my mom got sick, so I stuck around in Miami, quit the band, and I watched in horror as the band recorded 4 or 5 albums worth of material, and then it got shelved. So there's all this amazing material from Price with producers like Unfair, John Fields, Abe L'Oreal, Jack Joseph Puig, and it's just and Rudy Berg, and it's just sitting there, and it's just, again, major labels were signing bands while they were on fire, so it's like a tough situation because.
And Chris doesn't have the rights to this stuff.
I think he finally got the rights to the Tony Berg record, but then his stuff took off, and he started making Dalmatian and Stop Talking, and that was his focus, and making the Emmett Rhodes record. So eventually, hopefully, that stuff will come out.
We hope so. I really want to.
Yeah,
it's really good. And then the other thing that happened is I started working with an artist named Hillary McRae, who was a jazz rock artist from West Palm Beach, Florida, from Boca Raton, Florida, and she got signed to Starbucks label Hear Music, and this was really heartbreaking because when Hear Music had an amazing 2007, where their order of releases were Paul McCartney's Memory Almost Full, a James Taylor live album, Joni Mitchell's Shine album,
right,
followed by Hillary McRae's album Through These Walls, followed by Carly Simon. What happened was the McCartney record did great. The James Taylor record, the Joni Mitchell record bombed. By the time Hillary's record came out, the label basically said, we're a coffee company. We're not going to put any money into this.
right.
And the album you could buy for 50 cents. So it's like it came out, but by the time Carly's album came out, the label was done. So I think there was an actual legal issue with Carly's record. So again, it was a sure thing. The Chris thing seemed like a sure thing. The Hillary McRae thing seemed like a sure thing. Didn't happen. So after a failed tour with Hillary opening up for what was his name? Oh God, I forgot
Michael
the artist.
Jackson?
No, the artist
Yeah.
that we went on tour with. The artist we went on tour with was kind of like the teeny bopper John Mayer, and unfortunately, all of his, Teddy Geiger. They put us on the road with Teddy,
Oh.
who was great, but all of his fans were 12-year-old girls.
Yeah.
Hillary basically sounds like Laura Nero fronting Chicago.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we had jazz changes.
And
We
that's
had
not
a
going to
horn
fly.
section, and it flew over everyone's heads. And I'll never forget the show where there was these girls that were sitting on the stage with their back to us because they were only there for Teddy Geiger and didn't want to hear it. So whatever. That
Well,
didn't
you
work.
know what? If I had a nickel for every sure thing that wasn't, I'd be a billionaire right now. Who
But
wouldn't?
it's tough because it all these things could have ended my career, but I ended up I have this kind of knack of turning failures into other things. So I went off to went back home and started putting together my first true record, which was Dreaming in Stereo 1. And that album came out, and I sent it everywhere. And one of the people that I got in contact with was you, David. And next thing you know, I had a band that I put together because I played all the instruments on Dreaming in Stereo 1. And then I put a band together, including Eddie Zine, who used to play with Hall & Oates, Marisol Koss, and a bunch of people. Next thing you know, I'm playing IPO in New York, and we meet, and I played IPO out here, and it was really cool. Well, one of the funniest facts about Dreaming in Stereo 1 is that there's a song on there called "I'm Not Going to Move to LA." So, oh well,
And that's a Facebook user right there. That's actually Lisa Michaels saying "Dreaming in Stereo" is a great name. So
It's a
Lisa's
great
checking
record,
in.
also. By the
you.
way, Lisa. So
Thank
pick it up.
It was an amazing
I
experience.
want to ask you before I forgot. How did you get hooked up with Bill O'Coin? Because I was just watching the Kiss documentary. Of course, he was instrumental in turning them into the powerhouse that they became. How did that happen for you?
Very simple. I was in a band called DC3 in Miami. It was a power trio with Derek Cintron, Tony Medina, and I was such a huge Jellyfish fan that when Derek, who's a drummer, couldn't find a drummer because he wanted to play guitar, I said, "Why don't you play drums standing up and sing?" And that was like he's like Andy Sturmer meets John Bonham. He's crazy, but he's like really really cool. So we had this band called DC3. Derek's old bass player Roman Fernandez was Bill O'Coin's partner, and Bill saw Dreaming in Stereo, fell in love with the band, and said, I can work with this. So we signed with him, sadly, a few months before he died. So we were the last band he signed. And
Wow.
there's so much that could have been there. Another misstep, because he had all these great ideas. We had just put out Dreaming in Stereo 2. We had all these great plans, and then it all fizzled because it was so tragic. Because his death was completely unplanned. It was just, I think, from what I understand, it was complications during a pretty pedestrian surgery. So we lost him, but I'll never forget it. I mean, he was such a cool guy and so influential to so many people, and a legend, a total legend. So
yes, he was.
He was amazing. But so we did Dreaming in Stereo 2. I started a label called Forward Motion Records in Miami, and that was a really interesting experiment because I saw so many great singer-songwriter projects in Miami and bands that I thought if we all joined together, maybe we could strengthen numbers. Well, what ended up happening is the local music magazine, local arts magazine, said we were sellouts because we had no punk or we had no noise music and we had no hip hop. And they're like, these guys it's just sellout commercial music. And I'm like, really? It was just power pop. It was a lot of power pop, a lot of singer-songwriter music. And around that time, my mom got sick. And when she passed away, lots of things led to me giving LA a chance. So I came out here 2012. 31 years old, moved to Reseda out of a Craigslist ad. I was like, oh, this is poetic. I love Free Fallin'. This could be amazing. Started
We
researching
love it here.
videos, and it didn't take long for me to get acquainted with people to the point where, I was playing major shows and doing lots of things. And one of the first things I did was IPO, and that's where I met Kate Brennan. So it was an amazing experience there. And I started producing a lot of artists, but one of the things that changed my life was my friend David Goodstein, who's from Miami, who for 10 years was telling me to move out here. He's like, you got to come to Candors every Tuesday. So I started going to Candors every Tuesday and jamming with all those guys like, Dan Rothschild, JJ Blair, Rick Torres, Matt Tecu, all these guys that are, Jordan Summers. And so it didn't take long for me to become one of what they call themselves the Fockers, Friends of the Candors Kibitz Ring. And I started even like filling in for like JJ when he was producing, be like, hey, I can't make it. Can you come in? So immediately. Now, one night, some guy in a suit walks in and he just says, hey, my name's Andy. I love the way you play. Well, another night, I got called up and somebody called Buffalo Springfield and we jammed Mr. Soul. And I did my patented Neil Young impression. And Andy
Let's hear it.
Says, holy crap, I'm working on a record. I'd like to bring you in on it. What are you doing tomorrow? I'm like, sure, I'll come in. I show up at a studio and he plays me some stuff in him. It sounds like Jacob Dylan. I'm like, is this Jacob Dylan? And he's like, yep. And I'm like, whoa, cool. He's like, this is an album of songs from the 60s, Laurel Canyon era. You may know a few of these songs. And actually, one of the things that cemented was the fact that I didn't need any charts. Puts on You Showed Me, I knew it.
Yeah.
Puts on Questions, I knew it. Puts on, Never My Love, which is a hard song, I knew it. And he's like, oh, okay, this is going to be cool. And he's like, these are all going to be duets because it was just the pilot vocal from the scratch vocal from Jacob all the way through. And he's like, look, these are all going to be duets, and we'll see what happens. Then I started getting the text messages I fantasized about my entire life. He's like, hey, you remember You Showed Me? That's Cat Power now. Hey, you remember Never My Love? That's Fiona Apple now. Hey, or no, that's actually Never My Love. That's what's her name? Nora Jones. Bells of Rimney. That's Beck now. But then it gets even crazier. He's like, hey, I got bad news. You're no longer playing the solo on Questions. Eric Clapton is, but you're keeping your rhythm guitar. I'm like, oh,
okay.
All right, sure. Next thing you know, text messages about Neil Young playing on tracks, and text messages about everybody from Josh Homme to freaking. It was really, really jarring, but very, very cool. But basically, so then this started becoming the Echo in the Canyon project, which was supposed to be an album. We did a concert at the Orpheum Theater because he wanted to get live footage as bonus material to promote the album.
Right.
That night, something sparked in Andy Slater's brain. And he says, this could be a better movie than an album. There's only one problem. Albums could take about a year or less. Movies take about 5 years. So from that night in 2015, it took another 4 or 5 years for it to come out.
Right.
So it was a very long, drawn-out process. And that recording of Questions of Eric Clapton on it didn't come out until later. So it was a long time to hold stuff in my brain. But it was an unbelievable experience. Be part of that movie. Be part of that soundtrack, which is really cool. And it boosted my career to the point where I could go up to someone like Denny Seiwell and say, hey, let's make Ram.
And is
So,
that what you virtually did? You went up to
well,
Denny Sywell, or
I had met Denny. See, I met Denny at NAMM Festival, at the NAMM convention, where, if for those that don't know, it's a convention that happens every year pre-COVID, that in Anaheim, where all the musical instrument companies they set up booths. It's kind of like a car show, but for guitars, amps, everything.
right.
But to have fun, they bring in all their celebrity artists and stuff. So the difference between Denny Sywell and every other drummer that they invite is that he's actually a very nice guy, very approachable, very cool,
Right.
very modest. And I just introduced myself and said I was a huge fan and said I would love to work with him. I didn't come with him like I want an autograph. I came with him like we're equals. We're from the business, and I'd love to collaborate with you. Well, I ran into him again because fast forward a few years, some of my best friends are playing with Denny Lane, and they're playing at Bogies. And this Ben LaCourte, Alex Jules, Eric Paparazzi are playing with Denny Lane. And they invited me to sit in, and I show up, and there's Denny Sywell and his wife hanging out because they got invited. And they saw me play with Denny Lane. I came up and played Band on the Run with them. And again, I came up to Denny. I'm like, we got to work together. And he gave me his number. And the opportunity came when I was starting a project called Open Sound with a pretty talented, really talented singer-songwriter named Justin.
Here we go.
There it is.
There you go.
I have to say, this is my favorite thing that you've ever done.
Thank you.
Of many things that I love that you've done, Open Sound is, well, it's right up my alley. It's so power pop.
Mm-hmm.
And the songs are so catchy.
Thank you. It really is. I unfortunately have to put that in the same category as Price, Hillary McRae, and Bill Aucoin because that project, I met Justin at a Tom Petty festival that happened. It was a thing that it was like a Tom Petty tribute, and he was really damn talented. And I was like, hey, we should work together on something. We started writing, and next thing you know, he's coming over to my studio every day, to the point where we made the album. We ran out of time. We ran out of songs, and we started working on what I thought would be the never-ending covers record. And he had suggested doing Too Many People, and I was like, we should get the original drummer. He lives right around the corner in Woodland Hills. So we hired Denny Sywell, and we did 2 songs, one that Justin picked, Too Many People, and one that I picked, Some People Never Know. We did those 2 songs. Denny loved my studio, loved my drum kit, loved my work ethic, and loved my sound. So the Open Sound project was incredible. Making the record was great. Justin is incredibly talented, but a little troubled. And let's just say that the bottom fell out. We played a show, and things were completely different. And even before the album came out, he quit. He just came out of I came out of nowhere, where he disappeared for like almost a month, and then he called me one day and he said that hey, this project's going to be really good for our individual solo projects. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I really would rather focus on singing for God.
Oh boy.
And that was all great, but I paid for all the mixing on the record, so it was a really difficult situation.
Yeah.
So I saw the album through, but only after getting a solid contract, So the album is out, and it did great, but there was that's it.
No follow-up. Yeah,
no, it's a fine legacy, at least.
Yeah.
At least
well,
you can
yeah, look, I'm glad it exists, because there's lots of scenarios where stuff like this happened and albums got shelved forever, So I made sure the album exists, because if there's one thing I tell my clients is, make your records, make your music, because it's going to outlive you,
right.
And, it's all on our minds. I mean, we lost Zach Nielsen recently, and it still hurts. But I'm really happy that Jason Burke and I got to produce his version of his song that he wrote for his dad, Bigger Man, and get that done, because before he got too sick.
Yeah.
And it was great. And he co-wrote 2 songs on my Zebra Crossing record. And I wish we would have done more, but his cancer battle was very public on Facebook, but in many ways, it was the bravest thing I've ever seen anybody do.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, again, get your music recorded, put it out there, and don't be discouraged if nobody buys it, because you never know when people like the three of us will discover a record in a used bin somewhere, and next
Exactly
thing
right.
you know,
Oh
it's
my
a
God,
big
hell
thing.
yeah.
Well, it happened with Linda Perhax, who I produced. She put out one album on Cap Records in 1970 that for years it only sold like 500 copies or something. And then somebody discovered it, put it out, and next thing you know, it was like the album that all the hipsters, all the hat wearing Silver Lake hipsters got into. So, it was a beautiful thing. And next thing you know, one of the first things I did when I came out to LA was seek her out. And Chris Price actually introduced me to her music way back. And when her album came out, she had not been found. There was rumors that she was dead. There was rumors that she was, in hiding somewhere. There was actually lots of false information. Turns out she was a dentist in Woodland Hills.
Wow.
I randomly found her. She had been. It
Was
turned.
it like pulling teeth, getting?
Oh, it turned out.
I'm here all week, people.
It's funny. Yeah, Chris has a song called "Pulling Teeth," which is actually which is very funny. I'll never forget when he mentioned that song title to Linda, and she's like, "Yeah," but Linda was, she's older. She's way older. She's in her 70s, and she was all these people wanted to work with her, but they were all in Silver Lake. When I moved out to Reseda, I was told by a few people I was shooting myself in the foot. It's too far. It's too far. I found out that, man, some of the coolest people in town live out here in the valley. And that led to me working with Ken Sharp. That led to me working with Linda. That led to me working with Dean Ford. That led to me working with all these people that are out here and in the valley. And the valley is pretty damn hip. And now
Dean Ford from Marmalade, by the way. Yeah.
Dean Ford of the Marmalade, who I got to
Well, not everyone listening knows who that is, but they know who Marmalade is.
It was amazing working with him. But the Linda thing was incredible, because then we produced a record for her called Soulful Natural Things that came out on Sufjan Stevens' label, and it was the Guinness Book of World Records longest time between album 1 and 2, 44 years. 44 years, 1970 to 2004. That's crazy.
That's
And
nuts.
then we did another record with her. Pat Sansone co-produced it from Wilco and Autumn Defense. He co-produced the second record we did with her, I'm a Harmony. Also had Chris Price on it. But this all gave the idea to Chris Price. He was like, all right, let's see what happens. He moved into, he all of a sudden gets in touch with Emmett Rhodes. And next thing you know, I have lunch with Chris, and he says, we're going to make an Emmett Rhodes record. Who should we have in the band? And we were like, oh, Roger Manning for sure. Taylor Locke. He recommended Joe Siders on drums. I was like, well, we got to get Jason Faulkner. We got to get John Bryan. We got to get that. And next thing you know, we're in Hawthorne working on an album with Emmett in his studio, which his studio was a complete disaster. And Chris and his friends, they got it working. We brought my computer from Reseda Ranch Studios over there. The first time ever a computer's been in there. And we used this console, all the vintage stuff. We used the pump organ. We used the Gulbranson piano. We used his homemade Leslie speaker. And we made what ended up becoming Rainbow Ends, which was his fourth album. And, he passed away in July, and he never stopped making music. He just stopped releasing it. So,
right. Yeah.
These songs, a lot of them were older, but man, it came out incredible, and it was an amazing experience. And, it was a wonderful ending to the story, because it's so weird for him to have such an incredibly vibrant career that just stopped out of nowhere in 73.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he went through a lot. That's for sure. I met him in the mid '90s, and he was very much like Brian Wilson at the time. Very short answers, sometimes going off on tangents that you couldn't possibly predict, and just seemed really, really troubled. And like Brian, thankfully, friends of his got together with him and helped resurrect him both as a musician and as a human being. So we can be very thankful for that.
I'll never forget. Chris Price said, "You're going to meet Emmett today, and I just want to warn you that he may say things that might, make you want to throw your bass down and leave the room. Just let him be." And I do have some stories. He let's just say that his filter disintegrated because he was definitely a very odd person. And if you listen to any interviews he's done, yeah, he's a loose cannon. But what a talented dude! What an incredible guy!
Wow.
No doubt.
I've gotten to work with so many incredible artists from the '70s that are still incredible. Andy Pratt, I did 4 albums for him that just came out as a 4-disc clamshell box set.
Yeah. I actually reviewed that box, and I recommend to any Andy Pratt fan or any fan of '70s music, in fact, to pick this up. He's a great songwriter, very evocative lyrics, and can still hit those notes.
Oh yeah,
anyone who's heard Avenging Annie,
Andy
the
is
notes
amazing.
he hit on that were incredible, and he can still hit them.
He was the first older artist I produced, and in many ways, he trained me for Andy. Sorry, he trained me for Emmett, because Andy is another case of a guy that's filter. I guess after a while, the filter disintegrates, and he said some weird stuff too. But we made some great records, and it was really cool. Then I worked with Dean Ford of the Marmalade. My friend Dan Matovina hooked me up with him, and he was incredible. Another guy whose voice was absolutely perfect, and we performed, his the Marmalade stuff is absolutely insane, and we did a bunch of shows at a place called what's it called? Oh, Genghis Cohen.
Oh yeah.
We did Reflections of My Life, and it was absolutely amazing to play that song with the original voice, the original songwriter. So it blew my mind. So it was really, really incredible to work with him. And all these things led up to going back to Denny Sywell. After Open Sound fell apart, I had already told him, I'm like, man, it'd be really fun if we did a Ram band and did some shows. Well, pandemic happens, and I had this idea because I had read that Ram was turning 50, and I wrote Denny. I said, Denny, Ram's turning 50. It'd be amazing if we did a new version with you on drums and a bunch of really cool people. We just raid our Rolodex and put together a new version of the album. We've already got one drum track in, with too many people, and that was December 13th that we started laying down drums for the rest of the record. Now, this is how Denny Sywell works, because Denny is 78 years old, believe it or not. And he's also a responsible adult, and his filter has not broken. And he says, I texted Paul, and I asked him if it was cool, to do this, because he's like, I've got this friend who wants to do this new version of Ram, and he's got a great studio, and there's a whole new generation of artists that are influenced by Ram. It'd be okay if we did this. And Paul McCartney wrote back, and he showed me the text, and it said, sounds great, have fun. Four words. Those 4 words was the fuel in our fire.
Sure.
We started working on the album December 13th. We were done by February 1st. Over 100 people on the record. And it was an incredible experience. Denny said if he was involved, he would have to make the final decision on singers. And on a lot of things, actually. So all the singers were based on, his choices on the singers were based on his years. Not on friendships, not on the ability to sell records. So a lot of people, when they see this record, they don't see huge names. Because a lot of tribute records, it's like Flavor of the Month, Boy Band Number 5, Dave Grohl, Ed Sheeran, and, a comedian or an actor. No. Everybody that's on this record is a bona fide Ram fan. Not a McCartney fan, not a Wings fan, a Ram fan. And in the end, I'm 100% happy with the record. It came out really great. There's a lot of our friends on there. Everyone from Bebop Alula, Eric Dover of Jellyfish, Rob Bufilio with his wife Carney, and daughter Lola. So, 2 generations of Wilson.
Well, Fernando, we've got a phone call coming in here.
Bring it in.
Yeah, hold on. Let's see what's going on here. Hold on. I gotta figure out how to do this.
Oh, hello.
Facebook user. Hello. Who's here? Hello.
Okay. There we go. Every day she takes her morning bath, she wets her hair. Wraps her towel around her head, she's heading for the bedroom chair. It's just another day. Slip it in a stocking, step it in a shoe, bring it in a pocket of a raincoat. It's just another day. It's just another day. It's just another day. Oh,
Guesses.
hey.
Oh my gosh.
Fernando. Okay, how are you guys doing? Can you hear me?
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Sir Paul. What an honor it is to have you join our podcast.
How are you, David?
I'm doing well. Been a long time.
Mark and Fernando.
Oh,
Congratulations on a great tribute.
Well, thank you. We're going to do press to play next.
I might not text you an okay for that one. We'll have to see. But it's great to be here. Great to finally see you all enjoying the record.
Well, Ram was a great record. Yeah.
Yeah, as you guys know, I just finished McCartney, which was sort of me and Linda just sort of mucking about in Scotland. As the Beatles were sort of coming to an acrimonious end. And that record was released, and then you want to do something different.
Nobody wants to hear about the good records. Come on, we all want to know. We all want to know about.
Tell us, Fernando.
Tell us some off the ground stories. Tell us about working. Tell us about Blair Cunningham. Where did you find Blair Cunningham? And tell us about Biker Like an Icon. I want to hear about that one.
Well, as you probably, most people know, Linda was a beautiful photographer. And so we'd done some things where we'd be out in the country. And one day we were out on the streets, just sort of as you do, getting lost in the country. And here comes this biker fella. And Linda started taking pictures. And the next thing you know, I said, you should take a picture of that biker with your Nikon. And she said, well, I like a biker like an icon. And I think you've got a bit of melody sort of came into my head. And the rest is history.
Fernando.
Great. Blair was fantastic. And of course, Chris Whitten.
Yeah.
He was great as well. But those were the days, as they say. Tell me, can you guys talk a little bit about, one of the songs on Ram, which was sort of controversial with John. He thought Too Many People was about him. And here now you have 100 people playing it.
Yeah, that's way too many people.
So who were they? Can you tell us about that? I know you had one of the fellas in Wilco, I think, playing on the record. And a bunch of other people who really, for me, are the most talented musicians I've never worked with. Well done.
Because you're too busy playing with yourself.
Well, hey,
we all heard McCartney.
Listen, Fernando, you want to watch it. You want to watch it. If you want to press to play, you want to watch it.
You've given us lots of albums where you play with yourself, Paul, and we love it. Really, really nice.
Yeah, that was one great thing about live.
Green Roar, that drum solo, that's the best, man. Heavy breathing, you're playing with yourself.
Cheers.
That's what you're doing in the studio.
Okay, cheers.
Fernando.
I can see what it's like working with Fernando in the studio. He gets a bit cheeky, doesn't he?
Fernando, we'd like to introduce you to our good friend and a big fan of yours, Eric Howe. He came on to do this for us just as a nice little fun thing to do to break it up a little bit.
Not Steve Ricks.
Just to
Steve Ricks is great. He's a inspiration to us all, isn't he?
Yes. And those just don't stare at the teeth too often. You know, he does his Bee Gees thing with the teeth was gives me nightmares still.
Congratulations on this record, though, my friend. This is just what a tremendous achievement. I hope you had a shadow film crew in there.
Oh man, well that's the problem with lockdown is that there was it was 95% of what we were doing. We're taking tracks and putting them together. And a big kudos to our mixing engineer Zach Ziskin, who was able to take everything from the best recorded stuff to Marvin Stamm recording trumpet on his iPhone to a lot of people recording because not everybody.
Can you make yourself visible, by the way?
Huh?
Oh no, look, David, we're going to keep it mystery.
No.
I've got a face for radio, David. You don't want to spoil the mystery. I'm surprised Mark gave it up as soon as he did. I was ready to keep it going all day.
Well, we have to end soon, unfortunately.
All right. Well, listen, lads, we are gonna. Paul's breaking back in here because I've got to go as well. And as we all know, no one tells Paul we've got to go. It's got to be Paul to say, "Listen, lads, it's been great. I gotta go." But I'm going to play you out with this one once again. Fernando, congratulations on a great effort of my own record on the Ram tribute. And Ram on, everybody. We'll go all the way back, though, for this one. Every night I just want to stay in and go out of my head. Every day I just want to live stream with all of my friends. Ooh. Every night I want to play out. Every day I want to do. But tonight I just want to stay and live stream with you and talk to you. Okay, folks. Cheers.
Eric, cheers. Thank you so much, my friend.
All right. Okay.
Well, there you have it.
Wow,
it was really nice of Sir Paul to take time out of his busy day and honor our little podcast with his presence. But speaking of which, Fernando, one thing I wanted to ask you: you've worked with a lot of people, obviously, but who's the one person, if you had to choose one, who you haven't worked with yet, that you'd like to work with? Who would it be?
Oh, well, if you asked me a few years ago, it would have been King Washington, which is a local band that I was.
Oh my God, they are awesome.
I ended up producing Tyson Kelly, but I'd love to get. I mean, that's a band that I would love to. If I had deep pockets, I'd love to put that band back together.
Hell yeah!
They were the best. They were just everything I wanted. In many ways, I saw Open Sound as a possible. It was definitely influenced by them, and just harmonies and all the voices and that magic. So I hope you guys get back together. But look, I'd love to work with the Lemon Twigs. I got to work with Danny Ayala from the Lemon Twigs, and the Twigs played on his record that I worked on. But I'd love to work with them. I'd love to work with Wolfpack somehow. I'd like to work with Todd again. My Todd Rundgren story is that I won a remix competition where he released my remix, so it's technically on a Todd Rundgren album. But I'd love to work with him for real, like and be in the room with him, be on stage with him. I'm a huge Caravan kick, and they're still amazing live. And I would love to be in a room with them and help them regain some of the magic sound of the old records. Look, I'm making a lot of really cool music, and I enjoy every second of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little scattered, but that's part of what I do. I live and breathe this, and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And production has turned out to be the thing that I really want to focus on. I play in bands. I'm still in Dirty Diamond. I'm in a band called 9 Mile Station with Will Hawkins. We're working with Scarlett Rivera of the of the Rolling Thunder Review. That's like an Americana project. I have a new album coming out with Carmine Apiece.
I heard about that. Yeah.
It's going to be on Cleopatra, and that's going to be coming out hopefully by September or so. It's like a Jeff Beck instrumental fusion rock thing, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm working on some new Out to Sea music. Somebody mentioned the Out to Sea thing. I do instrumental prog rock stuff, very Peter Banks, Jan Ackerman, Steve Hackett inspired stuff. And I'm going to work on some more Out to Sea music. And
speaking of which, you've got this, of course. This came out recently, and this is very, very cool.
Project.
People should check that out.
Basically, Todd Rundgren's my favorite artist of all time, and I recorded a couple of instrumental covers, and they got such a great response. I did a whole album. Now I'm starting to take requests for album 2. So if there's any Todd Rundgren songs that you'd like to hear instrumental, let me know, because I'll do TR Guitar Volume 2 next year for sure.
And the Ram on, now, is there any truth to the rumor that the Ram on disc might be performed live somewhere somehow? Thinking
now that thanks to vaccines, we could all be in a room together. We're talking about getting together and jamming and seeing what happens. And the beautiful thing about Ram On is that since we have 100 musicians, there's enough musicians in New York to put together a New York band, enough musicians in LA to put together an LA band. There's some musicians in Europe. We could put some stuff together. So Denny and I could fly anywhere and do the album.
Right.
So we're trying to put together the LA band, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll see how things go.
And of course, that disc is available now.
Yeah,
Ram On the 50th. I wanted to make sure everybody knew it's available at all the usual places. Digital download, Amazon.com, and it is on Cherry Red Records, a great label out of the UK. Mm-hmm. So anybody listening to this that's a fan of not only Fernando's but Ram, it's out. Get it.
And if you're a fan of current power pop bands, there are a lot of names that you'll know and enjoy. These guys do it really well. That's the key. I mean, you're starting off with an amazing album, one of my favorites of all time, and you're fortifying it with some amazing musicians of today. So it's a win-win, and I guarantee you, power pop fans out there, especially, you'll love this.
Well, the thing about that record is that, again, we started off with a perfect record, so it did make us a little nervous about messing it up. But once the performances started coming in, that's the beautiful thing, is that everyone's passionate about the record, and when people hear the record, the vibe is there, and Denny Seiwell's amazing drums are there, and we even got Dave Spinoza to play on Another Day, and we got Marvin Stamm to play on Uncle Albert, the original trumpet part. So it's not the typical tribute record because there's original guys on there, right. And it's a lot of fun, and a lot of great power pop artists: Timmy Shawn, freaking Bebop Alula, Rob Figlio, Dead Rock West with Cindy Wasserman. It's a really cool record.
Gordon Michaels, who had that great album. Yeah.
I found that record in a dollar bin, and it just blew my mind. It was just like I found him, and he put out another record recently called Tune Rider that's
which is really good too.
Really, one coming out soon. I would love to work with him in a production standpoint, but he's got his stuff down. He still sounds great, and there's a song from Stargazer called Indoor Lovers that sounds like Another Day.
That is my favorite song on there, for sure.
Incredible song. Nowhere to go. And the cool thing about it is that record was produced by Hugh McCracken.
Oh,
so
wow.
in ways, Gordon was brought in to represent Huey because Huey passed away a few years ago. And, that's the thing, is that he was brought in because he was Huey's, big protege. And when he sent us that vocal for Another Day, it was just like we were knocked off our feet. So good, so many amazing people on the record,
thanks Fernando for having me on the Ram album. That's Paul Myers checking in.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Love you, Paul.
Good to see you.
You're the man, buddy.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, want to make sure you knew that because it just says Facebook users in front of us. But
who can this be? It could be. I was thinking
it's Paul Myers saying hi.
Hi, Paul. Good. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, man.
Awesome.
You're the man. Awesome, man. Thanks, guys, for having me. It was a real
Thank
pleasure.
you so much for being on. You're a great interview. I mean, we can just wind you up, and we don't. It's not like we have to extract anything from you. It's like all there, and we appreciate that.
And
No
there's not enough time in an evening to go through everything wonderful you've been involved with, my friend. And my absolute honor and pleasure to talk to you. And great work. I mean, just thank you so much.
Yes, continued success, Fernando, of course, and we'll stay in touch as always.
Just keep an eye on my pages and on my Bandcamp and stuff, and I'm always putting out new stuff and making new things happen and making new connections happen, and there's lots of great music on the way.
Yes, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, Fernando Perdomo.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Fernando.
Stay happy, stay healthy, stay grateful, my friend.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you. All righty. That was fun. He's another great interview. It's like everybody we're getting is really good at doing this. So,
yeah, I mean, you and I, we're not really doing that much work. We're just like you said, we're turning the key on, and away they go. But what a great interview, Fernando Perdomo. Just mind-boggling amount of things that he's been involved with, and of course, tipping it off with Ram On right now. And a whole lot more coming down the road. So, wow.
That's right.
Yeah.
And all right, well, cool. This was a great one. I'm glad that we solved my connection issues. Hopefully for good. And yeah, it was fun to be back on for a whole hour and with no glitches. And always great doing this with you, Mark.
Yes, indeed. And everybody who checked in, we thank everybody for checking in and commenting. Again, it says Facebook users and things, but you'll see it in the archived episode. So make sure you share the archive show with all your friends and let them all know that this was a great Fernando Perdomo interview. So they all check in and come back and see us next week we'll let you know who's going to be here next week. It's always till we figure it out.
That's right. Thanks, everyone. Be good. Stay safe.
Have a great night.